Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news updates. Always a pleasure and a privilege when we get together for these weekly updates. And again, we're thankful for those of you who share the links, who subscribe to the channel, and who let others know that we get together once a week to do this. Because we used to, if you were a news junkie like I was, you got updates all the time, and that drove you a little nuts. So that got anxiety levels a little high, right? We don't need that. And then there were those that would be completely disconnected from the news, which, of course, I think that's a little too far to the other side. So this once a week thing turned out to be pretty good. Great idea. And as it worked out, weekly, we've been able to stay connected and go over things as they come through the biblical or scriptural lens. And this is very important that we keep our eyes on the kingdom and look at the world through the lens of the kingdom of the Most High. Amen and amen. And of course, for those of you joining us for the first time, we have this wonderful website called remnantwatch.com. We certainly encourage you to bookmark it. Thousands have, as a matter of fact. Bookmark the site and visit regularly. And so we're thankful for those of you that do. Here you won't find a bunch of pop-ups. I think that's why people are starting to find it. You're not going to find a bunch of irritation when you're looking for just, quick review of the latest headlines. You don't want to be looking at 50 million ads. You just want to, do a quick scan. Okay. And if you're like me, you like that. You like to be able to just quickly run through, just take a look at what's going on without having to get, too caught up. And we do have, of course, these handy guides, which I have yet to find a reason to remove them. So they're there every week for those that are going to potentially need them. And again, you never know because these things happen overnight. And we do have the search bar for those stories that you may want to go back and take a look for, because after all, sometimes these things are trending and you may want to take note of it. Also, make note of the fact that there is a banner at the top where you can always catch the latest of our broadcasts and come hang out with us. How many know that come on, who else is having a great time when we hang out and look at these things? Come on. I mean, I love it. I love the comments. I love the encouragement. And I love that we get to stay together on these things and not be overwhelmed. Like we said, we like to be informed without being overwhelmed. And it's working. It's working because we get to laugh. We get to have a great time. We stay lighthearted. And we look at things and see how they're comporting to the scripture, and the things that we knew would come to pass to keep coming to pass cyclically, as a matter of fact. In Earth's history, as I keep saying, if you keep playing the same silly games, you're going to keep winning the same silly prizes, right? So on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, this one got a little dicey, and here we go, folks. Because now you guys remember all the saber rattling. We've been watching this for the last couple of weeks. Saber rattling going on in the Gulf of America. It's no longer the Gulf of Mexico. And so, there's been all this sort of saber rattling, a lot of things going on. And now Russia has stepped in and said it will defend Venezuela. The plot has now officially thickened, folks. It has officially gotten thick around here. Russia has vowed to fully act. Look at this, folks. Fully act as U.S. sends warships to Venezuela, sparking new World War III fears. And Russia has pledged to be ready to help Venezuela as the U.S. continues to reinforce its military presence near the South American nation. And Russia has vowed to stand by, ready to assist Venezuela as Donald Trump ramps up the U.S. military footprint near the South American country in what Washington has characterized as a counter-narcotics operation. So this is interesting. And I think that Russia is saying, well, you got involved in our regional conflict. We're going to get involved in yours. Watch this. Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov stated the Kremlin is ready to fully act within the framework of the obligations that were mutually stipulated in this agreement with our Venezuelan friends, following the nation's signing of a strategic partnership in May. And although the partnership hasn't taken effect yet, Lavrov indicated it is getting close. 3 months following its signing, Venezuela inaugurated a facility to manufacture Kalashnikov ammunition, and last month, a sanctioned Russian cargo plane recognized for delivering defense materials touched down in Venezuela. And it comes after lip readers exposed Trump's chilling three-word whisper to Putin in a major World War III warning. Vladimir Putin robot falls over and breaks into pieces in a humiliating debut. Funny things going on in our world. And, one of the reasons why we take this view is because we know that a lot of this is theatrical, folks. A lot of these things are deliberately put in front of people to keep them in a state of siege or a state of trepidation. You are much easier to manipulate and suggestively move, especially in mass, when they need this. So they keep the population in general under a state of siege. It is very effective for government mind control. Very effective. So that's why we have to keep an eye on some of these things, because, of course, you are all the remnant. We want to keep you awake and aware so you can sidestep a lot of things you're going to see going on in your world. And so this is important that we understand it. Amen. We're going to continue to see, I think, more activity from Russia in the Western Hemisphere, guys, because I believe that, again, what we're watching is theatrics. All right, so we're going to continue to see this Russian military spy ship tracked by U.S. Coast Guard and just 15 miles off Hawaii. So, it's international waters. They're bound to be international boats out there. But, of course, the headline comes out to make us aware. Oh, no, these things are going on. The U.S. Coast Guard said it detected and tracked a Russian military spy ship just miles off the coast of Hawaii. The latest incident of a Russian vessel or plane operating close to the USA. Imagine that. Russians coming near the USA. I mean, the USA has got a nerve. It's right there on the Russian border. I think this whole thing is, sometimes it gets really hilarious. The Russian intelligence vessel Karelia was spotted about 15 nautical miles south of Oahu in October 29th, the Coast Guard said on Thursday. And an AC-130 Hercules helicopter and a Coast Guard cutter were dispatched to monitor the ship by conducting a safe and professional overflight and transiting near the vessel. So, of course, they're paying attention to these things. But look, folks, again, a lot of times what it is sensationalized to keep us on the edge of our chairs. So don't let it overwhelm you, but be aware that it may very well be that they're stoking a conflict to come. As a matter of fact, one of the concerns that came out just this last week was concerning Japan, which is now increasingly becoming more hostile in its rhetoric, especially concerning China. And if you remember, if you know your history, China and Japan don't exactly have a formal or a friendly historical relations. In the past, they've been quite formidable enemies, and China says it's seriously concerned about Japan's military security moves. And so, of course, Japan is making considerable moves now. China has expressed serious concerns over Japan's recent military threats, warning that Tokyo's military moves could destabilize regional peace and security. And in a post on X, Ling Ya, spokesman for China's foreign ministry, warned that administration of Japan's new prime minister, Sanai Takaki, over his ambitious statements regarding Japan's new non-nuclear principles and possible efforts to develop offensive capabilities, including nuclear submarines. And of course, I believe that I read that they have enough plutonium or something to make something like 5,000 bombs or what have you. So Japan could be a formidable force to be reckoned with in Southeast China or the Southeast China Sea. And so we're obviously going to keep an eye on this because we saw a lot of earthquakes, a lot of things happening in Japan, China, the Philippines, Korea, this whole area of the earth where there seems to be, of course, there's Taiwan there. So again, a lot of potential for conflict in this region. So we have to keep an eye on what's going on there. Another area for, of course, conflict, and something that, of course, squarely is in the scripture is the Middle East, of course. And so we're watching this with great interest, right, guys? So we really can't get our eyes off of the Middle East area because, again, it is squarely in the scripture. but we know that we're watching a repeat of a repeat of a repeat of a repeat because this just keeps on happening. Trump is now deploying U.S. military to Damascus, to their air base, in a major Syria shift, according to our report. And so this is now, the White House is now preparing to deploy, according to this report, according to Newsweek, they're preparing to deploy the United States military in an air base in Syrian capital Damascus to help shore up the potential security pact between Syria and Israel that U.S. President Donald Trump is currently brokering, according to a news report. So we're seeing a shift here in the positioning of Syria. Syria went from a hostile state to Israel, if you remember. Israel was repeatedly bombing and attacking Syria, and so all of a sudden, we're seeing in the West a shift of policy concerning Syria. Now, again, we reported that the president of Syria was not too long ago an enemy of the United States and actually a combatant against U.S. military forces. So this entire scenario is very, very difficult for many people to process. I think it's reasonable for folks to have real serious questions about what's going on in Syria. But the thing that draws our attention, especially scripturally, is because it's directly north of Israel. And there's plenty of scripture that talks about enemies coming straight down from the north. So this is of interest to us because we want to continue to keep an eye on, but I think that we're going to continue to see more rumblings along the way. So this is fitting into more of the wars and rumors of wars prophecy, that we're continuing to see more and more sort of positioning and posturing. And so is this a positioning and posturing against Russia and against the north of there? We're going to see, because we know that Russia was very active in Syria, as was Turkey. So is this now going to change the geopolitical landscape? And now that Israel is, of course, through its proxy, the United States, involved in Syrian politics. So this is going to be very, very interesting going forward. Hopefully, it works out peacefully, but we'll see. Getting back to that Venezuela situation, I should mention that just to, again, point out the seriousness of the matter, top officials are presenting President Trump with military options for Venezuela in the coming days. So we should expect to see at least some type of increased rhetoric at the very minimum, as senior officials in Washington on Wednesday presented President Trump with updated options for potential operations in Venezuela, including strikes on land, according to multiple sources familiar with the meetings at the White House. So Secretary of War, I guess he's not Secretary of State, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Keane, and other senior officials briefed the president on military options. And so, again, when they start talking about this stuff in the public, guys, that's usually a foretelling of things to come. So, talk about this kind of stuff in the public unless it's possible that they're going to actually be pulling some triggers, right? So if you're in that area of the world, you may want to clear out. You may want to be aware of potential military targets. Those of you that live in those areas are definitely at risk because, again, once these things go kinetic, the potential damage is severe. And again, there's going to probably be indiscriminate warfare if, in fact, it breaks out in fighting. So we certainly pray for those that are in that region, and we do expect there to be conflict. I do expect there to be conflict. The question is just how big is that conflict? So hopefully it'll be contained. Hopefully it'll be reasonable. But I do suspect that they didn't get dressed up for nothing. So they didn't send down the warships for nothing. Those are expensive ships. It costs a lot of money to run those. A lot of money to send you guys down there, especially when your government's closed, which, by the way, they reopened, but whoop-de-doo. Okay, so we're definitely watching that. That wasn't the only thing, though, they got together and had a war room gathering about, though, because, there are other things that are really important. And you may not think this is a big deal. Some of you have thought of this, and I did for a long time. I thought this is a real sideshow act. Really doesn't matter. It's a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of old, decrepit people doing decrepit things. But the more you get into this story and the more you get into some of the details, you start finding out that some of this was used to manipulate and control very important senior officials in your government. And so, as long as senior officials are potentially blackmailed or manipulated in any way, then I think it does become a much more important story than people's sort of personal predilections and picadillos, right? So, when you're starting to see that, then you have new questions to ask. And top Trump administration officials met Wednesday. So same day they were meeting for this other thing, right? So obviously they gone ahead and knocked out a few things with the key GOP lawmakers about an effort in the U.S. House to force a vote on releasing Justice Department case files related to the Jeffrey Epstein affair, according to multiple sources familiar with the meeting. Now, they did release a bunch of records. I think it was like 20,000 records. And White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt acknowledged the meeting later Wednesday when asked about reporting the administration officials were huddling with GOP Lauren Boebert. And so basically what they're now going to do is, take the high ground, say, hey, we're releasing stuff and we're putting it out and trying to put this fire out that had basically started over the summer where Trump was starting to look really bad for not releasing that information without restriction. The reason why is because he's all over that information. So I think we're all finding out that, our favorite president wasn't so awesome. And again, to the extent that these things are used to manipulate or control people, then that makes it very relevant for the American people who are then subject to those under that control. So that is when it becomes very, very important because of the fact that it has potential ripple effect. The also thing that makes it important is the victims. If it turns out that the victims are sub-age, and as it's now looking like, of course, some of that information reveals, then there should be prosecution. The end. The fact that there hasn't been to this point is egregious. If it turns out that there is, in fact, evidence there indicating criminality, indicating abuse of children, then there's no reason why that should be hidden, and that information should be used to the full extent. It certainly would be against you or I. So that is something we should expect. And I think that we should be, in the spirit, if no place else, demanding that light shine in the darkness and all those who have done wicked deeds be exposed for such deeds, because these are things you can't run from. Remember what the king said: if you hurt a child, be better for a millstone to be tied about your neck and cast into the sea than for you to fall into his hands. It will be better for you. That is what he said. So he made a very strong threat there, and I do believe he carries it out. Now, there are a lot of things going on in our hemisphere, and one of them is a massive amount of chaos going on in Mexico. Right here, just south of us, Mexico's anti-corruption protests are descending into chaos as thousands of Gen Z demonstrators are storming the National Palace. And rioters are storming the barricades outside the presidential palace in Mexico City as an anti-cartel protest descends into chaos. And most mobs of the frustrated, mostly Gen Z Mexican protesters trading blows with cops and screaming slogans about how corruptions and cartel killings have spiraled out of control in their country. So you're seeing a lot of confrontation going on. And this is, of course, spilling over into other countries as well, where citizens are now challenging authority and challenging that status quo. Folks, this is a difficult thing for us to watch because we know it could very easily happen here. And so, in fact, there are some that believe that we are on our way to a civil war, and that it is only a matter of time before we see this very thing in the very streets of our nation. And so this is something that is a difficult thing to watch out, terrible foreboding, if you will, of potential things to come, with horrible looking flags in the street and groups pitted against each other and without knowing what their agendas are. Imagine that. You're all of a sudden in the street and there's people out there with agendas. You don't even know anything about it. You just went shopping. You're just going to get food. All of a sudden, here you go. This is our world, and it's shifting quickly. And this is why it's important we be informed without being overwhelmed so that we can make wise choices. If you're in Mexico City or we're thinking of traveling to Mexico City, you might want to know this, right? So you could maybe think about something else to do with your time. I personally would not recommend travel to Mexico until they settle this stuff down. It's been very dangerous, and there's been threats against Americans. So my recommendation is find someplace else to vacation for a little while. But to each his own. Those that want to go do that, let me know how that works out. But I do expect that it's going to be a difficult period of time for Mexico going forward. Another part of the world that's having a difficult challenge is France is certainly having difficulty keeping its territorial integrity as it's being overwhelmed, but that's not keeping it from minding other people's business. And so France says it will help draft a constitution for Palestinian state. Wow. As Abbas visits Paris. And so Macron says the Palestinian leader presented the first draft, adds France to audit authority to ensure the end of pay-to-slay system. Ooh, that's a rough word. And Abbas's Ramallah committee to peace wants a democratic unarmed state. And so they're putting forth the paperwork for a separate state in Israel. Okay, so for there to be a Palestinian state, and there have been many, many people that have called for this. So this is not a new thing. France hosted Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Paris for a meeting on Tuesday, during which President Emmanuel Macron committed to helping the Palestinians draft a constitution for a future state. And Macron, whose country led the charge in recognizing a Palestinian state during the UN General Assembly in September, said France and the Palestinian Authority would set up a joint committee to work on drawing up a new framework for the state. So there's a massive push. They're not letting go, and they really don't care that the U.S. is opposed or what's going on. They're just going on ahead anyway, because this was the plan. And now, of course, you've got a contrarian in the White House who's not going along with it, and so this is going to shock, guys. Anybody surprised that we're about to go into some conflict over the Middle East? Anybody looking? Wipe that surprised look off your face. I see all you surprised people out there. No Palestinian state, says Netanyahu, west of the Jordan River. So he's certainly not buying into that. Netanyahu rebuffs the right-wing criticism and downplaying U.S. draft resolutions to the UN Security Council, backing a pathway to Palestinian state, and reports of Gaza reconstruction without demilitarization. Israel will not permit the establishment of a Palestinian state anywhere west of the Jordan River, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said over the weekend, rejecting criticism from his own government while downplaying political differences with the Trump administration over the Gaza peace plan. So there's definitely some conflict going on here. And again, the U.S. and the administration in Israel are not in agreement. And so we see conflict there. There's a tremendous amount of protectionism that is going on in Israel, which makes sense if you understand their geopolitical situation. However, the international community seems quite well bent on insisting on there being a Palestinian state. So this may be a foregone conclusion and may turn out to be a conflict that is, well, frankly, inevitable. So this is why I believe we're seeing some of the machinations that we're seeing right now, folks. And one of the machinations that we saw, especially going on in Israel, so again, paying attention, things going on over there. Did you know that Donald Trump wrote to the Israeli president requesting a pardon for Benjamin Netanyahu from corruption charges? Now, I thought that was interesting and interesting timing. So he's over there lobbying to get Bibi off charges. That's interesting. So I find that interesting. I'm wondering what would motivate him to do that. The U.S. president written a formal letter to his Israeli counterpart saying it's time to let Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu unite Israel by pardoning him of corruption charges. So he believes that this would be a unifying force in Israel. I'd love your comments on that, folks. How many of you out there reading this say, oh, yes, if they pardon Bibi Netanyahu of those corruption charges, that will serve to unify Israel? How many believe that? I'd love your thoughts on that. I'd love your comments. I don't buy that. I'll just come out and say, I don't buy it, but maybe you have a different point of view. Maybe you think that would work and that would create a unifying effect. And if you think so, then please drop your thoughts in the comments of this video. I really would love to hear that, because I really don't think it will. I think it would actually make for greater protests in the street. I think there's a strong anti-baby a movement in Israel. I think there's a lot of people that are very, very skeptical of the Israeli government. So that live in Israel, they're Israeli citizens that are good people. Okay. They're just good moral people, and they just have moral questions. They have good questions. So I just don't think it would be a unifying factor. I don't think you'd suddenly have unity, because he got pardoned. Not that I'm against pardoning. I just don't agree with that premise. So I'd love your thoughts, guys. I'd love your ideas on that, because I think that's an interesting point of view. Hey, pardon this guy. It's going to bring unity to the country. I'm agreeing with you, David. I think it would do the exact opposite. I don't quite buy it. So anyway, but he's certainly putting pressure on the region for there to be peace. Like, he really wants to be known as the guy who brought peace to the Middle East. That's his deal. He really wants to conquer the thing nobody else could conquer, that whole deal. And so Trump told the leader of Saudi Arabia that he expects Saudi-Israel deal with Gaza war over. So he expects there to be movement. Like, he's like, let's go. We wrapped it up. Let's get moving. President Trump told Saudi Crown President Mohammed bin Salman in a phone call last month, with Gaza war ending, he expects Saudi Arabia to move toward normalization with Israel, 2 U.S. officials told Axios. And why it matters? Well, U.S. officials have told the Saudis they're hoping for progress on that issue around the Trump MBS meeting next week at the White House, although they acknowledge the gaps between the Saudis and the Israelis remain wide. The U.S. officials said behind the scenes, the call between Trump and MBS, which was not previously made public, took place after the Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt last month. We reported on. So this is an update. This is why, again, we wait for things to shake out, right, guys? To see here, got a little update, a little phone call they had between them. And now we find out, oh, he's putting the pressure on, saying, hey, we're going to settle this thing down. We're going to quiet it, and then we're going to go back to making some money together, guys. So everybody be good. Everybody be good. Going to build some stuff. The Riviera of the Middle East, right? Of the Mediterranean. Well, we'll watch with interest to see how that's going. Meanwhile, back at the ranch in the United States of America, the place that the guy actually is supposed to be running, not doing so well. Things are looking a little bit rough in the USA. As a matter of fact, China, basically, the place that uses a lot of soy, soy sauce. They go through a lot of soy. You know them? Remember those guys? Well, guess what? China didn't even import a single U.S. soybean in the month of September for the first time in 7 years. First time in 7 years, China has imported no U.S. soybeans. None. U.S. soybean imports to China dropped to 0 amid trade tensions, and Brazil dominates China soybean imports with 85.2% share. And trade talks between U.S. and China shows signs of some progress, so we're seeing some movement. But China imported no soybeans in the U.S. in September, the first time since November of 2018 that shipments fell to 0, while South American shipments surged from a year earlier as buyers shunned American cargoes during the ongoing trade dispute between the world's 2 largest economies. And imports last month from the U.S. fell to 0 from 1.7 million metric tons a year earlier. Data from China's General Administration of Customs showed on Monday. And so it is definitely, these policies are definitely hurting the farmers that are in the United States and those that are, soybean farmers. And there's quite a few that got into the soybean business. And this has become quite a serious issue. So somebody asked about whether the U.S. should continue funding Israel. I think the U.S. should treat funding Israel the same way it would treat any country in its foreign policy. And frankly, I think we got to relook at all of that. So honestly, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, good conversation to have for level heads. Moving on, China is continuing to make distance, and the way it's doing it is very interesting. Rather than just beat its chest or what have you, China just continues to put out good products. And one of them now is they're coming out against Boeing, right? So they're coming out with some really serious products here. China's homegrown C919 is a jet to make a Middle East debut at Dubai Air Show. So China's not, they're not playing the game the way that, that I think some people thought they would. They're just going to go ahead and keep building stuff. They're going to continue to do awesome things. And China's Southern Airlines C-19 aircraft arrived in Al Maktoum International Airport in Dubai early on Friday for its debut at a 2025 Dubai Air Show, according to the airline. And the plane, developed by Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, landed in the airport at 1:15 a.m. local time and ahead of the air show scheduled for November 17th. So the aircraft will be showcased for the first time in the Middle East at the event, one of the world's largest aviation showcases. And so China is moving out of the shadows of the United States in terms of its ability technically and to provide things like mass transportation. I mean, come on. Airplanes of that size, that was almost the exclusive territory of the U.S. and France with its they certainly had their products, but it was pretty dominated by the West. And so for China to be coming out that strong is fantastic. We'll have to see the safety records of these new jets going forward, because again, I mean, it was made in China. There is that. So there is, the Americans still have a chance if they can just build on quality and quit shooting themselves in the foot. But unfortunately, I think we have ourselves a spiral going on. And so now we're seeing that the economic situation in the United States continues to deteriorate. As a matter of fact, we are not going to get apparently economic data from the Trump administration for October. I think because that would be embarrassing. So they were basically trying to sidestep some of the information. He doesn't like embarrassment. So anything with bad news, he's going to bury. And the Trump administration said this week that several key pieces of the U.S. economic data for October, including inflation and employment figures, will not be released. The White House cited the prolonged government shutdown, saying it left statistical agencies unable to gather or verify the information. And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters Wednesday that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics could not complete its usual survey during the 40 days. Plus, the government was shuttered. So that gives them a very good excuse to not talk about things that would indicate how bad the economy is getting. Well, some of you are starting to feel it in your own neck of the woods, if you will, your corners of the world, and are starting to feel the economic changes that are going on. And many, many people are reporting some serious difficulties. By the way, I thought this was a very interesting story. Before we go into that, I just thought this is still international, so I just throw this in here. The thing that, Florida, they passed a law against the thing that people would spray in the sky with jets. But that thing that doesn't exist, that they made a law about, but doesn't really exist because it's a conspiracy, because it's not real, but they made a law about it. You remember that thing? Okay. You with me now? All right. Well, apparently the thing that doesn't exist, that you can't really do, that nobody does, that's absolutely not, that's just crazy. It's a conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy theory. It's real crazy and nuts and what have you. Well, apparently that Florida made a law against. In Tennessee, I think they do. Well, apparently Iran is going to try this impossible plan, this thing that's never been done ever before, ever. No one's ever done it. And it's a brand new technology. And Iran's coming out with it for the first time. They're bringing it out. They're debuting it. And they began cloud seeding operations as severe drought bites. I thought it was hilarious. I'm going, wow, they make it sound like it's these guys are coming up with this. Iranian authorities have launched cloud seeding operations and induced rainfall in the country faces its worst drought in decades, state media reported. And today, a cloud seeding flight was conducted in Umia Lake Basin for the first time in the current water year, which began in September, the official IRNA news agency said late Saturday. And of course, they're using the techniques of other nations that have used it as well to bring weather modification. And the reason why that's a real dicey subject is because if you brought a flood, aren't you then responsible for the damage of that flood, right? So this is why I think they don't like to talk about this, because there's side effects of some of their ideas. Speaking of side effects, I do believe that some of our rhetoric um, in the United States over Nigeria has backfired. Nigerian government have abducted dozens of girls from a boarding school over killing deputy head teacher in chilling echo of Chibok kidnappings. And so this was a repeat of something we've seen before. A Nigerian government have abducted dozens of girls from a boarding school after killing the deputy head teacher. And of course, this echoed the Boko Haram kidnappings of Chibok. The assailants, armed with rifles, attacked the Maga Comprehensive Girls Secondary School in Danko Wasagu, Kebbi State, around 4 a.m. So this was a boarding facility. And continue to watch and monitor these situations as they unfold, as we continue to pray against persecution, folks. A real reality going on. Getting back to the United States and the situation going on here, we are seeing major red flags. So for those of you that remember the 2008 financial crisis and the repercussions thereof, well, a lot of things are indicating that we're right back in that same spot again. So here we go with alarms ringing everywhere. We're getting even louder every week. It's becoming increasingly clear the U.S. economy has entered a crisis that is similar to what we experienced in 2008 and 2009. And I do believe that we are about to see a major, major economic correction, folks. And the reason for that is multifaceted. It's not just one thing. You can look at China and trade. You could look at the, government. You can look at central banking. But I think it's a confluence of a lot of things. And you can also add cryptocurrency and the influence of digital currencies to this mix. But I believe that the major, major contributing factor, the 800-pound elephant in the room, is the change of the workplace, the dramatic shifting, the paradigm shifting that is occurring with the way people work. Now, there's certain trades and physical labor jobs that don't change much no matter what. But a lot of what drives those jobs and drives the economy has shifted. And because people were used to something more analog, for lack of a better way to say that, they're falling behind on things that are digital. And right now, things are pretty crappy in the United States, as 1 in 4 U.S. households are living, according to this report, paycheck to paycheck. So according to CNN Business, it's not good out there at all. And so many, many people are now, they write these stories as if they're writing a folksy story. But the reality is 24% of U.S. homes are living paycheck to paycheck so far in 2025, according to a Bank of America Institute analysis released this week, which I think is underreporting. I think it's a lot higher than that number. I think especially with the recent crisis that we just went through, I believe that we're seeing a tremendous, tremendous amount of economic damage in the world. And I think a lot of it has to do with, again, shifting of the way things work. So some of the evidence of that will be closings of businesses, things that were staples. Saks off Fifth is closing stores across multiple states. Locations in Texas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut are expected to close because of the change or shift in the way people buy. So our economy is shifting because the way people function is shifting. We don't go to the malls like we used to. That was cultural. We used to have movies about going to the malls. This was a big deal to go to the mall. We don't do that anymore. It's not culturally the same. We're more of an Amazon and more of a order things off Walmart or something type of society today. So all of what was built with that prior thinking is now being massively impacted by the change in which we function. And those that saw that coming tried to get ahead of it, but there really is no real solution to fixing something like that because you got too many people still functioning on an analog when we've moved to digital. So it's like a dimensional shift. There has to be an upgrade. And this occurred when we went to scanners at Walmart, guys. So this is nothing new. Everybody calm down. We've been through this before, We've been through upgrades before, and we've been through, upgrades. We suddenly had debit cards in the Zon Jr. Remember that? And got to swipe the card. That didn't used to be there. And all of a sudden it was, We adjusted. this too shall pass. We'll have to adjust. But the indications are there. So if you're paying attention, you're seeing this. And now, for example, I made a comment about this last week. And here's the evidence. Car repossessions approaching record high as delinquency rates are soaring. And this is something I've been watching for some time because they're saying it's a car apocalypse. There's just way too many cars being repoed. A record number of cars are being repossessed as American institutes continues to fall behind on their auto loans and mounting financial strain. So they got talked into that car and that, $8.99 monthly payment, and now they can't afford it, according to data from the Recovering Database Network. Analysis by CUR Possession 2025 has seen over 7.5 million repossession assignments. You read that right, guys. 7.5 million repossessions. That's not saying people that are delinquent. There's probably more people delinquent. They just didn't get to repossession yet. So that is a huge number of people. Authorizations given to an agency to recover a vehicle on behalf of a lender. Based on historic trends, this figure is expected to reach a record 10.5 million by the end of the year. So, good time to buy a car. If you got cash, you can buy a car. You can get a decent deal. But, whoo, buddy. All right. And how about the car selling business? They got to be feeling it. When, people are getting repoed and what have you, that's got to suddenly be impacting retail sales. That's got to affect the general stigma about the entire industry as a whole, as more and more people have a bad taste in their mouth, having had a bad experience buying a car. That's 10 million people that may not buy another car for a while, that had a terrible, terrible experience, that went outside, went looking for their car, and their car's gone. And it doesn't feel much different than a stolen car. Okay, so if you ever had a car repoed, it doesn't feel much different than your car being stolen. And as a matter of fact, when you find out it was repossessed, it may even feel worse in many ways. So at least a criminal, you almost understood. When the bank took it, you're like, wait, I thought we were in this together. And the bank suddenly turned on you, right? So it's a real situation going on out there in the world today. And many, many states are already feeling it. So they're now talking about a recession in over 23 states. A recession is already here for 23 states, laying bare the cracks in the U.S. economy. According to this report, nearly half of the U.S. states are sliding into recession as the national economy tries desperately to stay afloat, which I think it's having a difficult time doing. And that's the stark warning from Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, one of the world's most watched independent economic firms, who, frankly, Moody's rates countries. So they're very important to watch Moody's. And his grim assessment comes after major corporations slash more than 150,000 jobs. Told you. See that, guys? The economy is changing and the way people work is changing. The biggest October total in more than 2 decades. 20 years. Haven't seen numbers like that. So sticky inflation, dwindling home construction, layoffs at factories, and flatlining wages also contributed to the bleak picture. So this state level picture mirrors the national trends Andy wrote in a LinkedIn report, and the U.S. economy is not in recession, but it's struggling to avoid one. Well, I do believe it is in recession. I think it's magic numbers and magic nonsense that make people think it isn't. It is, in fact, in a recession. I believe that you have no choice but to recede from certain activities, especially retail. So there was a massive amount of receding from efforts in that area. Again, certain building efforts, certain business efforts that were going to go forward. Now they're looking at demographics and going, this isn't going to work. We've moved into a, DoorDash society. So now people that are thinking about building restaurants, we're going, whoa, wait, we got to relook at that. Because people don't want to go anywhere. They don't want to go to the restaurant. They want the restaurant to come to them. Now everybody wants to live in their house and not leave. They're figuring out how to make money remotely. The world is changing. And so as a result, so is everything else that's going on. And yet, the people that are figuring out that part of the economy still need regular services. So they still need things like milk and eggs and everything else. So this is going to get interesting before we go out. But don't worry, because, Bill Gates and his buds, they're all going to come out with all kinds of solutions like milk without cows, things like that. So don't worry, guys. I mean, they got you. Stay in your mochaccino world. You got it. They got you covered. You don't got to worry about nothing. You don't want no real natural food anyway. You like that synthetic stuff, right? Well, here you go. Milk with cows, without cows. You got it inside the science of lab-grown milk sharing dairy world. And you get to find out more about this. You want to go over to remnantwatch.com. Running out of time today, so get on over there and read this. But basically, this is a report by the Times of Israel, and they're starting early next year. Israelis will find a new kind of milk on their supermarket shelves, one made without cows. Remilk, a food tech startup, guys, and it began selling its lab-produced milk from dairy proteins through partnership with Gad Dairies from next year. So how about that? You're not going to have to worry about running out of milk because, well, this Israeli firm is going to make you fake milk. Call it filk. We'll call it filk. You're drinking that filky stuff. Welcome to our world. Okay, this is where we are. By the way, a lack of adequate health care is really affecting those in Canada. I want you to continue to pray for those in Canada. Canada is in a real serious situation. Yeah, faux milk. That's a good one. So continue to pray for them. Lack of adequate health care. That report caught my eye, so I just thought I'd pass that along. We do have some folks in Canada. Some of our new members, in fact, are in Canada. And so we keep you in our hearts. And when we saw this, we thought, oh, no, that is not a good thing. A family of an elderly man is speaking out about the terrible hospital conditions that led their father to request euthanasia before he died of natural causes. So getting to the point where they're making people so miserable that they just want to die, which is a terrible, terrible thing. So again, interesting story on remnantwatch.com, and just wanted to point out to you things that are going on. Moving on into a little bit different area. Many of you keep an eye on this AI area. This is an area of a tremendous interest for us. We believe it requires governance, and it doesn't come from the government. It should come from the remnant. And we do believe that AI is too dangerous to leave to uninterested parties to govern. It is too dangerous. And I hope you're starting to see that. So you have no choice but to get in there and govern something that if you don't govern it, others will, and you will regret it. We are rapidly barreling toward a world where mind reading will be real, but it won't be people with Professor X like telepathy holding two fingers to their temples and closing their eyes. But instead, it's going to be technology called mind captioning, a technique that can turn brain activity into detailed text descriptions of what a person is thinking. So they are really getting far down this road. The way it works, as detailed in Science Advances, is that first an AI model digests about 2,000 short video clips, learning to pair visual content with written captions. This produces what the team calls a meaning suggestion. And again, guys, they are doing averaging. And so a lot of this is hocus pocus nonsense. But the point that is they come out so official looking and so intelligent sounding. And in reality, they are scam artists who are pulling fast ones. And I do believe that we're going to see some counter moves in the future where you have, these sort of AI things that come out and then sort of the AI busters. I think you're going to see that very soon as they start revealing the tricks and showing you how it actually works and exposing its manipulation. This is something that I believe has to happen in order to keep especially our young people safe from some of these influences. And I feel very strongly about this. Many of you know that we work very hard. We're developing things to protect our children. Our children are at risk. And that is not something I intend to trust some government agency to be concerned about. This is too big an issue to let go. So I'm grateful for those of you that get it and are starting to figure it out. AI is a challenge. Now, getting back to the economy, foreclosures are surging 20% as Americans struggle to pay mortgages and fears of a 2008 style crash are starting to come. So on top of the car thing, you do have the real estate as well. That is starting to be a battle. And I got to tell you, folks, it's a real thing. We've got to catch up on something right here. We need your help in the next 2 weeks. So those of you that are feeling inclined to stand with us, we certainly would love it if you would. So we can overcome a challenge we've got right here. But let's face it, this is reality. We've got to be, this is a sober and vigilant time in American history, and everybody's feeling it. And so those that are out there battling right now, this is why it's important for us to be found faithful, to be a barakah to others. Because if you are found faithful to others, he will be faithful to you as well. And so we're seeing those effects in other places. How many know that there are food lines starting to show up here, and right even in Canada, we're starting to see this, and I see more evidence of this starting to happen throughout the United States. But now they're talking about cloned meat, by the way, guys. So not only dairy, but now they're talking about cloned meat, and it's soon going to be entering into Canadian stores. So keep an eye on that. I'm sure that's going to be wonderful, right? Now you got fake milk and fake meat. You got faux milk and feet. Faux milk and feet. Fake milk, fake feet, fake meat. So here we go, folks. We're moving into some very odd times in Earth's history, and I do believe that the population is what's driving that. We did the numbers on ground beef last year. That woke a lot of people up. They're like, oh, yeah. So you definitely want to actually go to a butcher, just saying, if you're going to. And they got faux eggs now. Got fegs. We got fegs. We got feet. We got filk. We got fake everything, guys. If you're not seeing it, you're not growing it, you're not, out in the country, you're not so sure what you're actually getting in your grocery store. Just saying. Okay, just saying. Getting back to some of this robotics is going to be getting interesting. Don't you guys think this is interesting? This goes right back to the book of Revelation of the beast speaking, right? Terrifying looking robot powers up, immediately declares humanity is a resource to be manipulated or eliminated. To be a philosopher is to live in the constant reflection of existence. A philosopher's go. Aristotle was no angel. Sure, he established the first formal system of logic, and his theories dominated Western science for thousands of years. He was also a vowed defender of slavery. He was. That's true. It's actually true. Laying out ideas which were used to suppress people for centuries. Okay? Some of the people that you think are great. But look, this robot woke up and started declaring all kinds of things. It was crazy. And it's really fun when you start seeing this, because I laugh so hard, because I say this all the time. I'm like, they're going to take over the world with that. Yeah, they're solely going to run the world. They're going to so run the world. They can't even get themselves out of a paper box, but they need you to type a prompt, but they're going to run the world. Right after you type the right prompt. They can't even get the right number of limbs on an image, but they're going to run the world, though. Just so you know, they're running the world. Okay. What they are going to do is they're going to corrupt everything that's out there. And that's what's dangerous. And this is why, guys, I want to just say this very strongly. We love the children and we continue to defend them. And you really need to protect your children from social media. So a new report is out saying that young children as young as 6 are being exposed to very horrific content already by age 6 in social media. It's just not okay, guys, to just put your child in front of a laptop or in front of a device and walk away, because the child does not have a filter. The child does not know what is or isn't good. So I'm not going to go into the story. It's on there on Remnant Watch. We encourage you to go take a look at that, because it is important at this hour. Grandparents, parents really need to be awake, and don't be taking these things for granted, especially grandparents. Don't be naive and go, oh, he's just playing with the phone and it's been 5 hours. Okay. We don't do that. We need to go do something else with the kids. In fact, they're finding some toys that they tried to make for kids. They had to recall them. An AI-powered stuffed animal was pulled from the market after some disturbing interactions with children. This tech is really new and it's basically unregulated. And there are a lot of open questions about how it's going to impact children. It depends on the model also that's being injected and how that model was trained, guys. Who's governing it? So a children's toy maker, Fellow Toys, said it's pulling its AI-powered teddy bear, Kuma, after a safety group found that the cuddly companion was giving wildly inappropriate and even dangerous responses. Well, again, this is why these things have to be overseen. And without oversight, you are going to get that. In fact, you got some people suffering some psychosis and going over the deep end because they don't have balance and oversight. So a very, very dangerous time indeed. As a matter of fact, one of the dangers is image making. And again, this is an area that needs, again, oversight. It needs controls. You have tools, so the tools are capable of certain things, but how many know that the integrity and character have to catch up to the tools? So this is where you need governance and uh, oversight to prevent harm. Here's a potential example. A middle school student was arrested after allegedly sharing AI-generated nude photos of his classmates. So that was a bad idea. Number one, his parents weren't overseeing what he was doing with computers, so bad idea. And number two, he had access to technology that's adult technology. Okay, so again, we've got some regulating to do that's got nothing to do with the tools as much as it has to do with our poor parenting and putting our children at risk. Speaking of which, nothing makes the point more than this terrible story of a TikTok star that was snatched and executed. That's right, you're reading that correctly. Snatched and executed on live stream while her family watched. And this was terrible. A TikTok star accused of helping Mali's army has been executed by Al Qaeda linked jihadists, and Miriam Sisi was shot dead in the street by suspected members of the notorious Jamaat Nasr al-Islam wal Muslim on November 7th. Her death was shocked the West African country, and which is ruled by a military junta that is struggling to contain the jihadist insurgency that has gripped it since 2012. So this horrible reality, and she drew attention to herself, of course, through social media. So that ended her life. Again, popularity ended her life. So again, was it worth it? I don't know. I don't think so. And I'm sure those parents don't feel like it was worth it for their child. Speaking of children, again, we continue to see them under assault. And folks, we pay attention to these things. A Wisconsin teacher is, again, teacher's aide is charged with having sex with teen she was allegedly began flirting with when he was 12. 12 years old, started in on this child. The Wisconsin teacher's aide has been charged with having sex with a teenage boy with whom she had alleged started beginning flirty when he was only 12. A criminal complaint was filed against Stephanie Jensen. And by the way, pedophiles are not all men. Okay? Pedophiles are not all men. I know that's hard for people to process. They always think of, the male pedophile, the male abuser of children. Not so. I've read a lot of stories recently, as a matter of fact, where it was the women that were actually committing these horrible offenses. So again, it's an equal opportunity wickedness, and it is out in our world in force, folks, and it has continued to be a problem. As a matter of fact, here's evidence of that. Married teacher who sexually abused a teen and asked him to kill her husband. Look at that. So she was now sentenced to prison. Depraved married teacher who sexually abused a troubled inmate in Kentucky Juvenile Detention Center and then asked him to kill her husband will spend more than a decade behind bars. And so the 27-year-old was sentenced to Thursday to 14 years in prison after the jury convicted her of first-degree sexual abuse and unlawful transaction with a minor for having explicit sexual contact with a 17-year-old boy. And yes, a 17-year-old boy is still a child. I know that people want to try and make that no big deal. It is a big deal. It's still a child. We need to be protecting our children. And there are men that, of course, cross that line as well. So we do have a teacher that admitted to stalking, writing over 60 love letters to an 11-year-old student. If you can believe such things, can you believe this is happening in your world? And so, again, your children are at risk, especially you who have beautiful babies. You need to watch them carefully. Look at this psychosis going on. A teacher in South Carolina admitted to stalking an 11-year-old who was in his class. Dylan Robert Dukes, 27, pled guilty to first-degree harassment and was sentenced to 3 years in jail and 5 years of probation. According to the Anderson County Sheriff's, Dukes wrote an 11-year-old girl over 60 love letters, gave her cards, gift cards, ornaments, pictures, and unwanted hugs that made the victim feel uncomfortable. So again, there are groomers that are loose among our children. And this is something that we need to be aware of. we can't just take it for granted, folks. This is a reality. And some of the other side effects, I don't have time to go into this, but this story is in on Remnant Watch. We strongly want to encourage you, those of you that may be thinking about some of these weight loss methods, they're very dangerous. So you might want to read about some of the side effects of some of these weight loss efforts that are turning out to be deadly. So again, be aware. And there's some really healthy ways to do that. Reach out if you need that. But, there's no reason to be taking risky drugs. So be careful with the drugs. That is a very dangerous thing. And finally, our final story is a mother suing Roblox after she says a daughter's suicide is linked to an extremist group. And a mother is suing Roblox, a popular online platform, with the hope of preventing other parents from experiencing tragedy, a child's suicide. And so a day that shook Jamie Sitz a life when her 13-year-old daughter, Audrey Haney, took her life. And says she was a normal teenager and basically was affected by this group. Okay, and so so basically the group that glorifies school shooters, romanticize them, obsess with them, and they feed off of each other. And so, of course, this affected the young girl and cost her her life. And so this, of course, is the seriousness of the hour that we're in, folks. Why it is so important that we pray one for another, that we care one for another, and that we take the time to listen to each other. Many times the reason why these children end up in these situations is because people have assigned them to some technology and dismissed them. Here, go over here, go watch this. I don't have time for you. This begins a pattern of being dismissed. This sets the child up for predators. Okay, someone that will pay attention to them. So the way that you can defend against predators in your child or grandchild's life is really very simple. How about we pay attention? Thank you so much for joining us. I pray this broadcast has been a blessing to all of you. Thank you again for sitting with us. Shalom.